Last night, while I was doom scrolling on Twitter, I came across this theory. Now, I have been following this dude for a long time now, and I'll leave a link to his Twitter in the description down below. But the theory goes like this. I assume Higuruma's domain could be their way of surprising us and calling Megumi to the stand. If he can target Megumi specifically, creating a situation where they can all interact without Sukuna's intervention, Uraume either, then they're all caught within the domain. And Akari is still smiling as if all is going to plan, and that kind of adds to that potentially. On the flip side though, Sukuna passing the burden of Higuruma's trial onto Megumi may be really cool if possible, and it's something which would also backfire and lead to the same result, allowing an opportunity to connect to Megumi directly. Now, this theory got my fucking brain cooking, because right now Gege is in this really unique position, and I think we all know that this isn't really going to be the final fight. There's still a lot more to show and tell within this story, and some of the biggest prominent moments are still yet to come, point being Kenjaku, hashtag Kenjaku for final villain. But Yuji and Higuruma vs Sukuna is a fight that none of us really saw coming. Well, maybe some of you big-brained individuals, but the vast majority of us, me included, pictured up a straight-up brutal 1v1 between Yuji and Sukuna, or just Sukuna just straight-up getting jumped by everyone after the Gojo fight, Hayanera style. But this fight right now of Yuji and Higuruma versus Sukuna, well, that gives us a lot to play with. This combo could potentially level the playing field against Sukuna for Yuji to give him a beatdown and also bring Megumi kind of home for us. So I wanted to talk about this theory that Shad's brought to us and also add more to it, because it really did get my brain cooking. Because Shad's theory here is basically Sukuna could shift the burden of Higuruma's domain rather than taking it himself, or alternatively Megumi might be forced to take control over Sukuna's body and be called to the stand as a witness for the crimes of Sukuna, which by the way is a lot of fucking crimes. But you probably sat there wondering how, so let's just dig into that one. We'll start with Higuruma and then we'll work through all the other variables here. But that's a character that was introduced to us in the storyline of the Culling Games, which is obviously still ongoing, and he was expressively said to be a genius and a natural talent as a Jujutsu sorcerer. And Higuruma's domain is something that allows him to enforce a non-violence on his opponent and also takes away their chaos technique. But with Sukuna, this is a strange situation, because I've theorized that Sukuna has multiple techniques, which makes me wonder if confiscation will take away just only the one technique or all the techniques, or maybe it might work similar to how Maharaga works and he'd have to go through the trial a couple of times to take away all the techniques. I'm not entirely sure, but as for the domain clash right now, I am working on the basis that Sukuna doesn't have his domain back. I'm not excluding it as a possibility. It's entirely possible that Sukuna does have his domain back and he just hasn't seen fit to use it yet. But I'm looking at it from this perspective. Gege just gave Sukuna an insane power-up with this new world slash that we've all seen, and he also gave Sukuna his old body back via the means of reincarnation here. So Gege has just given Sukuna 2 buffs in exchange for a nerf, and potentially having Gojo dealing long-lasting damage and having him not be able to use his domain, which would also mean that Gojo did leave a lasting mark on the final fight and like a sort of a final gift for his students, which would be a nice touch from Gojo and by Gege. We'll have to wait and see here. But let's be real here, no one in the cast right now is competing with Sukuna's domain. It would go exactly how Gojo vs Jogo's domain clash went, so this theory really does rest on the shoulders that Sukuna cannot use his domain. But let's just say Yuji and Higuruma managed to trap Sukuna in the domain. Yuji could keep Sukuna's forearms busy the same way he did against the Grasshopper Chaos, while Higuruma traps them. And on top of this, there's a lot of little hints leading us to believe that we might actually be able to bring Megumi back, possibly through this exact method here. Higuruma and Yuta were the only ones who noticed that Gojo's domain activation speed. And while it might not be much here, it's definitely something, given that they both realized how fast this happened and what had happened, and especially given their titles as one, a naturally talented genius Jujutsu sorcerer, and then 2, the one who is second only to Gojo Satoru. These 2 have both been given pretty hype moments so far within the series, and Higuruma also watched as Sukuna transferred the burden of unlimited void onto Megumi, meaning we know a vessel like Sukuna and Megumi can be targeted by domains and chaos techniques. After all, the body is the soul and the soul is the body, so it does make a lot of sense. But it's also worth pointing out here that Higuruma only had his technique for 12 days before being able to reverse engineer it and create this power that he's got right now. He's now had a month time skip to train with some of the best Jujutsu sorcerers on the planet, and yeah, he could potentially be having a seriously powerful domain right now. But the next big part of this is Yuji had some ideas on how to save Megumi, and right after that, Yuji was handed the Book of Souls by Choso from Yuki, which Yuki basically had spent the later part of her life writing, and right now, Yuji and Higuruma are about to start the tag team against Sukuna in a domain that involves non-violence, meaning the opportunities for binding vows to be created in order to bring Megumi back are now starting to crazily raise. And in the same way that Sukuna made a binding vow with Yuji to basically bring himself back to the dead, it was a non-violent interaction that happened. I mean, apart from that one time where they actually did fight and then Sukuna actually cut Yuji's head off.
I'm a bad bitch. You can't kill.
I mean, apart from that, it was a non-violent interaction, but you get the kind of gist here. But it's also entirely possible that Yuji would soul swap with Megumi, leaving Megumi in Yuji's body and Yuji in Sukuna's body, and then Yuji then goes for the route of self-sacrifice, something that has been hinted at within the story for a very long time now. We know Yuji's, unalive urges that have been happening all the way throughout the series, and Sufferance recently made a really fucking good video on this, so go and check that one out after this. But I think it's clear to me that this upcoming fight is possibly going to be the most in-depth and interesting fight that we'll see in the series so far. Courtroom setting for Jujutsu Kaisen kind of opens up the pathways for Sukuna to spill almost everything that he knows about Yuji and the Heian era and Kenjaku, and explain what he meant at this point in time when he said this kid is from back then and Kenjaku does the grossest things. There's a lot that can come from this fight, and honestly, I've said this before on Twitter. Go follow me on Twitter, by the way, if you haven't already. But I said this before on Twitter. I'm extremely excited for this fight. For me personally, I genuinely think that this fight could possibly top Gojo vs Sukuna, and I'm extremely excited for this fight. I think honestly right now Gege is cooking. There's a lot to be had out of this. There's a lot of theory crafting, and you guys all know I love me some theory crafting. But that is everything from me. Let me know what you guys thought about this cheeky theory in the comments down below, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe because that always helps me out. And as always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, peace.